The Bloodrack Medusa is one of those units that I don't think I've used a single time in Immortal Empires. Thankfully, its current year has taken it today in this BBB tournament match. We've got a series between him and Tudela kicking off today, a best of 5. We're going to get into game 1 straight in with Dark Elves versus Beastmen, and he's got the Siren of the Red Ruin, Bloodrack Medusa Regiment of Renown, of course, great anti-infantry missiles. I say great. Relatively short range, decently high damage. Does come with a direct bonus versus infantry, and I don't know exactly with the explosive damage how that's applied. I would need to research that a little bit, but does have the sort of odd role of being a hybrid missile melee monster to a degree, although it is somewhat squishy in melee with only 6,000 HP, decent melee defense, and decent speed. Not the best in the world, though. To back it up, he's got a Hydra, or a Charybdis, rather. Wow, interesting. Malice is definitely the anchor pin here. The very strong kind of meta piece. Got some Dread Spears here and some Black Ark Corsairs, plus looks like Slaanesha's Harvesters and some Dark Riders in the woods. For the Beastmen, we've got Butchers of Kalkengard and 2 Minotaur's Griffins, so very heavy Mino bus here. Brave Shaman, Lord of Wild, Grog Hooves as well, and some Ungor Infantry, Spears and hand weapons mixed, along with Centaurs way over there, and a Jabberslythe. Interesting choice. Jabberslythe, due to Dark Elves' decent leadership, isn't going to get as good a value from this Aura of Madness, but certainly can come in here and do a lot of damage. So, due to the Dark Forest and the Dark units, we'll keep the unit templates up. You can see the engagement kind of unfolding here in the woods. It's definitely disadvantageous for the Dark Elves, mostly to take the engagement here in the woods. Yeah, even the Slaanesha's Harvesters don't have Strider, so they're going to struggle to fight effectively there versus the Minotaurs, who do have Woodsmen. Meanwhile, the Siren of the Red Ruin somehow managed to engage like a single Minotaur. The Minotaurs do not get a surround, which is great for the Siren, but still getting heavily staggered, as you can see. It does get an attack there, but just generally going to be getting heavily staggered due to the light mass of this Bloodracks. Tend to get bullied a little bit. Here in the center, things are going much better for the Dark Elves. Charybdis acting as a great counter for the Jabberslythe. Very interesting to see. Obviously with old Mino bro Koroks fighting in this combat, he will provide a pretty substantial component of damage. That being said, a little bit of Spirit Leech here, Malice countercharging in, and the melee engagement infantry-wise going decently well. I mean, obviously Elves having better leadership, better stats overall, they're able to win fairly decisively on that infantry fight. Murderous Prowess already popping off, though, and only 2 minutes into the match. I said this engagement was going to go poorly, but actually with the supporting spears here, these Dread Spears come in, support the Dark Riders in the woods, and it actually ends up going okay. They are able to beat back the Minotaurs, but in terms of value, let's see, how much did they actually trade out? Yeah, it looks like neither of those Minotaurs actually did all that well in terms of value trading, so there's that. We do have 1 unit of Corsairs facing some Spearmen way off the side of the map, a little bit far there, but that's fine, as there are plenty of units to account for. Both these players going with kind of somewhat narrow builds. But let's see here. Yeah, great use of these Dark Riders to go 2v1 on the Minotaurs. High charge bonus to the Dark Riders. Decent DPS means that in a surround situation like this, they can finish off a weakened unit with that extra charge bonus from Murderous Prowess in particular, putting them up to 50 charge bonus, which is quite substantial. It quickly wears off, of course, but still, the uptime was long enough to make a difference. Charybdis also doing a great job of dealing with the Jabberslythe, 2 exceptionally ugly monsters, duking it out here for the title of the true ugliest. Brave Shaman gets a little bit tangled up in the tentacles of the Charybdis, and that's not going to be great for him. Obviously, he wants to avoid that as much as possible with that anti-large damage and the poison. Charybdis does very heavy damage, and it looks like Toroks also suffering. I see a Word of Pain there from, I guess, the Bound Word of Pain. It must be from the Slaanesha's Harvesters, who get terrified away by the Jabberslythe. Of course, the magic damage from the Jabberslythe, great against that squishiness of the Slaanesha's Harvesters, bypassing their physical resistance. 40% physical resistance on Slaanesha's Harvesters. They're almost ethereal, not quite, but pretty close. magic damage does make a substantial difference in terms of dealing damage to them. Of course, monstrous splash attack still might have enough to get through and just straight up kill the models anyway, but here we see the Signer of the Red Ruin unleash her ROR Scream. Does a little bit of damage in an AoE. Actually, a substantial amount of damage if you take the upper end. And it is strong versus multiple combatants, so would be best used against multi-model units, it looks like. Most likely cavalry. Don't know if the damage scaling on that had changed since Warhammer 2, honestly. But so far, the Charybdis has managed to get some... Or, sorry, the Medusa here managed to get some pretty decent value. Nothing insane, but there's still plenty of game left to be played. As the Charybdis, Malice, and Bloodrack are all that's left on the field. Pretty much for the Dark Elves. Got a few scattered, tattered units about the place, but mostly it's all about the Beastmen at this point. Grog Hooves are almost out of ammunition, as are these Centaurs with throwing axes, so it's going to be a little bit of a drawn-out endgame phase as the Beastmen try to unify their own single entities. Nice friendly fire there from the Medusa, just shooting Malice in the back. Really, the best thing to do would be to try and unify the single entities. Maybe draw out one of these single entities like the Bloodrack, which is definitely the weakest in melee. And get it separated from the Charybdis and from Malice. That would be advantageous, but the ranged attack of the Siren is going to force the Beastmen to come attack this pocket. It's not like they can just dance around. I mean, they don't have the ammunition to do so anyway, but thankfully the Medusa's not that great in melee. The low armor, lowish stats means even against these regular Centaurs with throwing axes, do more than enough damage to actually rout her off. So sad day to be a kind of bad monster. A little dance there, but at the end of the day, the final valuation here, 1357. Not quite there. I don't remember exactly how much these things cost. Maybe we can check that after the fact, but the Charybdis, on the other hand, is doing a great job. Has now pretty much finished the Jabberslythe, and the Malice transforms into Zarkan form. So the thing to do for Tudela at this point, which would, seems dishonorable, but you're still following the rules, so I would say it's pretty much fair game, would be to get Taurox and literally just run him to the edge of the map, right? And then fulfill the attacking rule on Malice with whatever units you can. Just kind of throw these junky, tattered units at him and try and move away with Taurox. Maybe you could take the Grog Hooves also and kind of position in between so that if Malice does try and pursue, they can act as a more mobile, kind of fast counter, try and hold him back. But the biggest thing is to try and avoid melee with Zarkan and run him out, because of course while he's in melee he gets substantial healing, a little bit of damage resistance, and that will counteract his degeneration Zarkan, which will just deal damage passively over time. So I mean, obviously, again, you have to fulfill the attacking rule. It can't be breaking tournament rules, so you do have to have something at least moving to attack him at all times. But that doesn't mean that Taurox or some of these other targets couldn't just run for the hills in the meantime. Maybe go, like, make sure these spears don't come back from route, for example. Or the one lost Black Ark Corsair here. Looks like a tempting target, but in fact, as Taurox dives in, he's going to leave himself vulnerable to that Reaper of Souls AoE damage ability, which is going to come in and start to chip away at his HP and leadership. And will it be enough to actually finish him off? Hard to say. The Charybdis does get finished by the Minotaurs and the Grog Hooves, though, which is the tough part. So, yeah, if Taurox can keep his leadership together and they can just wait out Zarkan, the Beastmen can win this. But obviously, at this point, getting some units in here and in melee, the Grog Hooves trying to finish off the Charybdis. It's pretty unlikely to come back from route, but they sort of missed their window to charge Black Ark Corsairs effectively. They do have a little bit of regeneration in melee, but they're going to take a lot of damage from the Corsairs fighting in a big pitched melee like that. So now would be the time to really start to take advantage of that attacking rule. Make sure you're just fulfilling that, and then, like I said, run these other high value targets out in opposite directions, and then once one unit is defeated, then run something back, right? So you're still fulfilling the attacking rule. Anyway, this goes on for some time. The Grog Hooves sort of move in next, but it's enough melee that Zarkan can get enough healing to get the job done, and all he needs is to get close enough to use Reaper of Souls, breaks the leadership of Taurox, and its current year takes home the win. So up 1-0 on the series. Interesting Dark Elf build, I have to say. Probably the secret MVP is the Charybdis, and it's a monster that really didn't get the most love in Warhammer 2, but I have seen used effectively on a number of occasions in Warhammer 3. So definitely interesting to see this guy preferred over the Charybdis, and here I would definitely say as a direct counter for the Jabberslythe, it proved to be extremely effective. Yeah, the Siren of the Red Ruin jury's still out. We'll have to check the cost. It's probably pretty close to what you would want, to be honest. And then, of course, Malice slash Zarkan carrying as he typically does. Dark Rider is used to very good effect. And then the rest of the army is more or less just the Dark Elf Infantry. They do a decent job overall. Same can't be said of the Beastmen Infantry, who are largely terrible. That said, these Minotaurs with throwing axes definitely were a good call. Maybe even just going further in that direction with just the basic spears, even only like 2 of them just to fulfill model count, maybe grab a couple more of the throwing axes. I like the Minotaurs with Grippins in theory, but in a narrow build like this, they kind of lack the support units they need to operate, so maybe just going even wider with Centaurs. It's hard to say, but definitely an interesting one. I like the pick of the Charybdis as well, even though it wasn't quite able to pay for itself. And yeah, very good value on the Bray Shaman as well. So let's go ahead and jump into game 2. In this game, it's current year's cannons and crane guns get into an Old West style shootout with Tudella's Team Rocket led by Marcus Wolfhart, the intrepid Free Company militia, wagons, and superior firepower of the Empire grind down Cathay in this clash of human empires. Now join me for game 3 tomorrow. That's it for today. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.